Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday, April 28th at 3 o'clock p.m., and that means it's time for Women in Business. Now, I should say right up on top, StreamYard has been giving me an alert for the last couple hours that if you're in a group, the stream may shut down early. I don't know why that is. Apparently, they're working on fixing it. But in any case, if you are in a group, you may want to move to my profile to watch this, or to the Women and Business Facebook page to watch this, or to the YouTube channel, which you can find by going to YouTube and searching Kristine Shreve, and my channel should come up. It may be that StreamYard has fixed the problem, and if you're in a group, you won't have any issue, but who knows? All I know is that they were still saying as of just a little bit ago that they were having an issue. So go StreamYard, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, what we're going to talk about today is how to get the most out of attending a trade show. And I know this seems right on the nose, given that I'm now working with Applique Getaway, but it's something that I asked the question in the Applique Getaway Facebook group for attendees, which is here. If you have not already joined it, you should. And they had some really good tips. And the more I started thinking about it, the more I thought, this is a really good topic because the trade shows are coming back and people are getting ready to go to them. And so let's talk about, if you're going to go to a trade show, how to get the maximum value out of your registration fee, basically. Because, Applique Getaway is in July. I know the first NBM show is in Irving, Texas in May, I believe. The DAC shows are coming back, ISS Expo. So all these shows are coming back. Let's make sure that we get the most that we can out of them. So before I do that, I'm going to go check out the comments and see. Hi, Martha. Thanks for being here. Cindy, as always, thank you for watching. Good afternoon. And Gosta from Sweden, who never misses, and thank you for that. I love being international. It's lovely. And Carolyn is here with a big, long hi. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. So, how to get the most from your trade show experience. Now, to keep in mind, this is primarily from the attendee standpoint. I may throw in a few things regarding vendors, but for the most part, I'm going to talk about attendees. And the first thing I want to say is something you need to do before the show even happens. As soon as you paid your registration fee, as soon as you know that you're going to the show, let your customers know that you're going, and do more than let them know that you're going. Don't just say, I'm going to Applique Getaway, I'm going to ISS Expo, whatever it is. Tell them why you're going. Tell them what you hope to learn. I'm going to go and take a class on doing applique. I'm going to go and look at heat presses. I'm going to go and talk to vendors about buying a new piece of equipment, whatever it is. What you're doing when you let people know that you're going to a trade show is you're telling your customers that you're willing to invest time, money, and effort in learning something new, in finding new equipment, in making the services and the skills that you offer better. So it's basically a way of getting added value out of the registration money that you're spending by saying, hey, look at this, people who buy from me. I am investing in myself in order to serve you better. And this is something that a lot of people forget, I think, when they're looking at what they should do before they go to a show. They're like, oh, I should make sure I have plane reservations and book a hotel and do all this. But they don't, or if they do talk about going to a show, it's more like they put on social media, I'm so excited, I'm going to this show, which is great. And trust me, showrunners love those posts. But from a customer standpoint, what you want to get across is I am going to the show. I am making an investment of time, money, and effort in order to serve you better. And here's how that's going to happen. So hopefully what happens is then you get your customers excited. And when you get back from the show, they're hitting you up to see what the new thing is that you have, or to find out what new thing you learned or what new process you're going to be offering. And all those things are exciting and important. And we have a couple of Facebook users here. And I just want to say, if you are having an issue with StreamYard not showing your name, you can go to streamyard.com/Facebook and give them permission, and then they will show your name. But I'll say hello to Ellie from Arkansas, and then apparently someone else from Arkansas. I don't know if these are the same person or not, but thank you for being here, and I really do appreciate it. So streamyard.com/Facebook, and that will allow StreamYard to show your name. So back to what I was talking about. Let your customers know that you're going. The thing is, customers, and don't take this the wrong way because everybody's a customer of somebody, but customers can be kind of dumb sometimes. So lay it out for them. Explain to them how they're going to benefit by what you're doing. And if you do that, then they'll understand, especially if you need to close your shop or delay service while you're at the show, they'll understand why that's a valuable thing and why you need to do that. So really, plus, it's just great publicity because it shows that, and capitalize on it. Make it explicit and apparent that, hey, I am spending time making my skills and my services better so I can serve you better. And you may want to be that explicit about saying it. But what happens is people who work with you come to understand that, okay, you're not run of the mill and you're offering things that other people aren't, and you're willing to invest in your abilities to make them better. And that makes you someone who's worth working with and someone who's worth being loyal to. So use the publicity that attending a trade show offers you to let your customers know that you are investing in yourself, and also to build excitement in what you're going to learn and what new services you can offer and how amazing it's going to be when you come back from this show and you're going to know all this new stuff and you're going to have all these new contacts and it's going to be just so amazing. And my gosh, you need to stay tuned to my social media because as soon as I get back, I'm going to share all this stuff with you. Build some excitement, build some energy around the fact that you're attending. Make it an event, literally an event that your customers want to be a part of and want to know what happened and what you learned and what you bought and what you're going to be offering them that's new and exciting. Never underestimate the power of your excitement on your customers. If you're excited about the new equipment, if you're excited about what you learned, if you're excited about the contacts you made, that's going to bleed through on your social media, or even if you're just talking to a customer in person. And the more that you can get them excited about what you're doing, the more likely they are to come to you when they want something. So get the extra value of the expense of going to the show by generating some excitement among your customers is basically the capsule version of what I've been trying to say. So the next thing you want to do, set your goals and plan. And again, this is one of those things that when I wrote the little banner, I was like, well, yeah, everybody knows that. But not everybody does. You'd be surprised. You have to remember that I come at this much more from a vendor perspective than I do from an attendee perspective, because I worked at trade shows and set up trade shows and handled trade shows for years and years and years before I started working with Applicant Getaway from the vendor side. And one of the things that would always astonish me about people who came to the shows is that they didn't know what they wanted to know. They didn't have a plan. They were just kind of wandering around and collecting stuff, and they didn't know what their goal was. They didn't know what questions they wanted to ask. They didn't know what they were interested in. They didn't really have any idea. And yes, you can go to a show just for the sake of going to a show and wandering and maybe hoping that you'll see something that's interesting or that you like or want or whatever that might be. But you're much better off to sit down prior to the show, look at the list of exhibitors, see what they offer, figure out what it is you're looking for and what your goals are from going to the show. Do you want to find a new piece of equipment? Do you want to test run some equipment? Do you want to find a new supplier? Do you want to find some new supplies to try? Do you want to learn a new technique or a new process? All of these things are very valid goals for going to a trade show, but they all require approaching how you attend a little differently. And at the bigger shows, honestly, if you don't have a plan, you can completely miss people that you really need to see because you're wandering vaguely up and down the aisles and you don't know where the vendors that you want to talk to actually are. So always go to the show website before the show, look and see where the vendors are, look at the floor plan, plot out. I usually say 3 categories: people you absolutely have to see, people you'd very much like to see, and people that it would be nice to see, but you're not particularly concerned one way or the other about whether or not it happens. So that way you're maximizing your time. You've spent the money and you put in the effort to get to the show and be there. Make sure you get the most out of it you can. And even at a small show, you'd be surprised how easy it is to get caught up in something that's kind of cool, but really has nothing to do with what you were trying to learn or experience. And then you realize that, gosh, the show's almost over and you still haven't done the one thing that you really wanted to do. So having a plan, knowing where the vendors are that you want to see, and physically make a list of, this is the vendor I want to see, this is what I'm interested in their booth, all that kind of stuff. Because the more planning you do, the better off that you are, and the more value you'll get from the experience. Hello, Lisa Shaw. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you made it. I appreciate it. And it sounds really silly because some of the shows, I mean, like a DAC show or an Applique Getaway or something, honestly, you can walk that entire show in a couple of hours. But the point isn't walking the show. The point is getting to the people you need to get to and making sure that you're getting the information and the experience that you want to get. So you also have to keep in mind that some booths may be mobbed, so it'll be a lot harder to get to certain people. So you may want to, obviously you can't make a judgment call necessarily if you've never been to the show before, you've never visited that vendor, but you can try to make a guess and maybe also prioritize, okay, I want to get to these people, first thing as soon as the show opens so that I'll have time to talk to them, because later they may be just absolutely slammed, especially if it's a vendor that has products that you really would like to buy. I know we used to run into that problem when I was with Enmart, where we only had a limited quantity of something. And if you didn't get there pretty early in the day, there was no way in heck that, and that was not the word I was going to say, there was no way that you were going to get that product. So you need to plan. And if you know from experience, if it's a vendor that has a product that you like, that has been there in years past, and they usually get slammed, then make that one of your first stops. Go and get the stuff that you absolutely need, that you want to get a deal on, so that you don't have to wander in during the afternoon of the second day of the show and find out that, oh, everything of that particular product sold out within 2 hours the first morning. So it's just planning. It's using the information that you have and making the best plan to make sure that it maximizes the utility for you of the show. And don't also, and this is something that people don't think of, but it's, if you aren't sure, email the vendor and say, hey, I'm really interested in this thing that you have. Should I get there first thing? How big is your supply of this particular product? Also, some vendors will put aside product if you say, hey, can I pay you now and pick it up at the show? Some vendors will be willing to do that. Others will tell you to get stuffed, but you never know. So it basically comes down to, it never hurts to ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. And the worst thing that will happen if you do ask is they're going to tell you, no, we can't do that. And they might say that. And if they do, well, then okay, at least you tried. And let's see what other comments we have here. Lisa says, great advice to segment vendors. I also visit websites to figure out what a company is if the name is generic. That's always a good question too. And hey, Carly, nice to see you. And Carolyn wants a women in garment decoration booth. And yes, I know I do too. And I want swag and I'm thinking about it, but holy crap, there's only one of me. So give me a little bit and I'll think about it. But yes, that is on my list potentially for the future. And yes, Lisa says, check to see if you can pre-order and pick up. One of the stabilizer vendors I work with appreciates that I do this. And yes, some vendors will say, get bent, we're not going to do that. Other vendors will say, absolutely, we have no problem. And some vendors are very, very willing because their theory is that you might buy more if you don't have to pay shipping. So it's like I said before, if you have a vendor that carries a particular product that you like, if you're worried that their stock of that product at the show might be limited, contact them ahead of time and say, hey, if I pay you now, will you bring it to the show and I'll just pick it up? Because, you know, some vendors will say, absolutely, we have no problem doing that. Other vendors might say no, but you're no worse off if they say no. Then you just either decide how much you want that product, and you either make a determined beeline to their booth to get there and get it early, or you decide that if they're not going to help you, you don't really want to give them your money, and then you don't. You know, that's one of the nice things about being the consumer is you can choose to not give people your money if you don't want to. So there's that. But the gist of this particular tip is figure it out ahead of time. Look at the show vendor list, look at the show floor plan, figure out what you want, contact vendors if you're concerned that they may run out of something, or if you have questions about whether they're going to have a particular piece of equipment or a particular supply that you want at the show. That's worth asking too, because sometimes people assume that, you know, a company's going to bring everything they sell. And it's like, I mean, and with Enmart, we had 4 booths at DAX. And even with 4 booths, it was a tight squeeze. There was no possible way we could bring everything we sold. So we tried to maximize our space to make the most money. So we brought the stuff that sold the best and the stuff that was the highest dollar items or the most popular. So, you know, that's another good question to check with a vendor. If you're concerned about whether or not something's going to be there, shoot them an email and say, hey, are you going to have this thing? Because they may not. And I like this. Thank you, Cindy. That is a great idea about talking to a vendor ahead of time. It really does help. And speaking as someone who has been a vendor, like I said, hearing from customers is wonderful. Hearing what customers want. And most vendors will be really happy to work with you if you're going to be at the show. So it never hurts to ask. Like I said, the worst they can say is no. Next tip, again, another one that's kind of, oh yeah, really? And sorry, I need to adjust my seat a little bit. Dress for success and comfort. Now, what I mean by dress for success is, and this is my personal thing, not everybody agrees with it, but I think if you're going to a professional trade show where you're going to meet vendors, you want to look reasonably professional. Now, this doesn't mean you have to wear a business suit. In fact, I would not recommend that. But, you know, dress nicely. A nice pair of pants, a nice cardigan, a nice shirt, a nice button down if you're a guy. You know, you can probably get away with jeans. That's not a huge thing. But I've seen people come to shows that look like they just rolled out of bed 5 minutes ago. And frankly, they're a little scary looking. And the impression that that leaves is not, oh gosh, I really want to help with this. And I just am seeing a little notice here that says we are having trouble streaming to Facebook. Facebook currently has a bug that can cause this issue for some reasons. Okay, so I'm removing women in garment decoration from the broadcast because it is being annoying, apparently. So sorry if you were in the women in garment decoration group. Apparently it just ate the feed, so I deleted it. Carolyn makes a good point. Wear your own work. Yes, this is very, very true. And again, to update for those of you who may have been in the Women in Garment Decoration group and missed the feed, you can always go over to YouTube and just search my name, Kristine Shreve, and my channel will come up and you can see the feed there. And I apologize for StreamYard being buggy today. But wear your own work is definitely a good idea. And you want to look professional. You don't have to be uptight. You don't have to wear don't wear stiletto heels. You don't have to do anything like that. But I think you should look nice. You should look professional. And then also the other thing is comfort. And if you've ever walked a trade show, you know two things. Number one, dress in layers. Because especially with garment decoration shows, the temperature can vary so much. I mean, first of all, most show venues have the air conditioning blasting like it's going to blow you into, the next county because they have to, because they're dealing with a ton of people and a ton of lights and everything. And then on top of it, for a garment deco show, you've also got heat presses and embroidery machines and printers and all sorts of stuff that are running and putting heat out into the air. So in some booths, the temperature can be 10, 20, 30 degrees different than 2 booths down based on the equipment that's in the booth. And also how many people are in the booth. I mean, I can tell you when I worked with Enmart, we would get that booth so packed that you would have to end up, and there goes the on the way to the getaway. So I'm removing that one too. This is really annoying right now. So please go to the Women in Business channel or Women in Business Facebook page or the YouTube channel, because apparently that's all that's working today. Don't know why the groups are being annoying, but they are. Sorry about that. Anyway, so you want to dress in layers, a sweater, a cardigan, something that you can take on and off, with maybe a short sleeve shirt underneath it. If you're a guy, it's a little more difficult, maybe a t-shirt, a lightweight shirt. But you want something that you can change when you need to, because like I said, temperatures can really vary. The other thing, comfortable shoes. Wear the most comfortable shoes you can find, because you're going to be walking and standing a lot. And a lot of the shows don't really provide any seating. So you're on your feet the entire time from the time you get there to the time you leave. So make sure that you're wearing shoes that you can stand and walk in all day, that aren't going to give you blisters, that aren't going to pinch your feet, all that kind of stuff. And it sounds really, really basic, but the two biggest problems, I think, with shows in terms of apparel are, number one, the temperature differentials, and number two, the fact that you walk a lot. Even at a small show, you walk a lot, because you go walk the show and then you walk back and visit the booths you want to see, and you do all this sort of stuff. And it's hard on your feet. So make sure that you're dressed appropriately. And yeah, we can still see you and on my way. Nope, not anymore, unfortunately, because StreamYard made me kill it. And Cindy said, when we go to a multi-day show, the first day we dress nice, the second and third day more casual. And that's an option too. The first day, when you're meeting people for the first time and you're making an impression, then yes, go ahead and dress up a little bit. And then the second and third days, if it's a longer show, maybe be a little more casual. But I mean, we've all seen the people who are walking around and they just look like they just rolled out of bed 5 seconds ago. It's not a good look. And honestly, Little vendor secret that maybe I shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to anyway. Vendors are human. And we try not to judge based on how someone's dressed or how they talk or how they interact with us, but we do. So make sure that you're making the best impression you can make, because you want to impress these people being vendors as someone that, they want to help and take time with. So we're all human. We all make judgments based on appearance. We don't like it that it happens, but it does. And I don't think pretending that we don't is going to make things better. So just be aware of it. And definitely, definitely wear comfortable shoes, because your feet will hurt. I mean, that was probably the best investment I ever made when I worked as a vendor, because I was on my feet the whole show practically, and it's tough. So make sure that you're dressing appropriately, you're dressing nicely, and you're dressing with the idea that temperatures may change and you're going to be walking a lot. So be prepared for both those things. This is another one that people often forget, and I have to tell you, a vendor pet peeve a little bit. When you go to a booth and you want to enter a drawing, or you want to have them send you information, or they have something where, give me an email and we'll give you a pamphlet or whatever it is. A lot of people aren't prepared for that. They don't have business cards. They don't have any method for writing information down and handing it to someone. And so they really can't provide the information, and it really usually leads to the vendor then having to hunt up a pad of paper and a pen, write it down, stick it somewhere, hope they don't lose it, all that kind of stuff. So give a little thought to what's the easiest way to provide my information to someone if I do want a return contact, if I do want more information, or alternatively, if everybody at the show has giveaways and drawings and I want to enter and I want to do it easily. One thing I've seen that I think can be useful and interesting is people who have little stickers with, their name, their company name, their email, their phone number, and they can just put them on entry blanks, or they can stick them on, the back of somebody's business card if they want to have a particular vendor contact them or whatever it is. So that's one easy way to do it. Another way is just to have a business card with all your information on it. One thing I will say, please don't give people fake emails. Don't give vendors fake emails. If you don't want their information, if you're not interested in whatever they're offering, then don't enter their giveaway. Don't give them your information. You can say to people, no, I'm really not interested, or I'd rather not. That's fine. But I mean, it's such a pain in the tuchus when you spent all this money to go to a show, to set up a booth, to staff the booth, to be there to talk to people, and then people are giving you fake information. It's just not cool. So just don't do it. And that's my public service announcement for vendors everywhere. Just please don't do that, because it's just not good. So I really like the idea. And I mean, it'd be very simple to make if you have a printer. Just buy a box of labels, little labels, and just print up your own, address labels, basically. It's very simple to do. And then they're there and you can use them for whatever you need to use them for. You don't have to take the time to write things down. You don't have to worry about the vendor writing it down and getting the information wrong. It's very simple. Or business cards are the other option. And again, there are places where you can get business cards for very, very cheaply. So either option is useful and can be helpful. Okay, Cindy says, I do not understand the sticker thing. And okay, Cindy, what I'm talking about here, and this may be more a something that happens at quilt shows or something like Applique Getaway. Though we did it at DAX, a lot of vendors may have a prize drawing where they're giving away a kit of thread, or they're giving away a fat quarter of fabric or whatever it is, or a bunch of rhinestone designs or something. And you need to fill out an entry card or something to enter. So instead of filling out the card, you just have a little sticker with all your information on it, and you stick it on the card, and then you're done. So you don't have to take time to write everything out. That's what I mean. All those stickers could also be used if you're talking to a vendor and they say, hey, can you give me your information? I want to go back to the office next week and send you some specs on this machine or whatever it is. And you go, hey, do you have a business card? Here, I'll put my sticker on the back, and there you go. You're done. And then they can write whatever notes they need to write. So that's basically what I mean by the sticker thing. Yes, exactly. If you don't have business cards. Personally, business cards, I think, are maybe a little more professional, but stickers can work and do work for some people. So, it's kind of up to you which method you prefer. Another thing, have your questions ready in advance. And this circles back to make a plan before you go. But vendors are there for the purpose of connecting with people who want to buy from them, for making sales, making contacts, building their email list, building their business. So if you're going into a booth with a specific purpose, know why you're there. Do your research. Have your questions running in advance. Now, granted, you're not always going to know that you wanted a particular piece of equipment, but most people who go to a show who are looking for a piece of equipment know they wanted that piece of equipment before they went. So figure out what it is you want to know. Don't just stand there and go, well, tell me about this equipment. Have specific questions. What's the electrical requirements? How many pieces on average should I be able to get? Whatever it is that you need to know to make an informed buying decision. And the reason that I say have your questions ready in advance is it's just another part of maximizing the value of the event for you. Because if you know, and if you have written down, these are the 3 things I really need to know, you're going to stop. You're not going to waste your time. You're not going to waste the vendor's time. And you're going to learn the stuff that's going to help you make the decision as to whether or not you want to buy. Now, don't underestimate, and I never do underestimate, the value of actually being there and seeing the equipment in action, because that's hugely helpful too. But the other half of having your questions ready in advance is you can do the research, and you can also get some sense when you meet the vendors, and there are these who will tell you, yeah, it's totally for you, when it's totally not for you. There are some that will. It's a sad thing to say, but there are some that will. There are some that are about making the sale, and they're not necessarily worried about whether or not that piece of equipment is going to be the piece of equipment that you need. And they will tell you, yeah, it's totally fine and everything's great and this is totally going to work for you, whether or not it's actually going to work for you. That's just a reality of the world in which we live. So have your questions ready. Do your research ahead of time so you know, and you have some sense of, I think this vendor may be blowing a little smoke my way, or I think this vendor is actually doing good work. So it's basically a way to protect yourself a little bit, because, we've all met, sadly, probably an unscrupulous vendor at one time or another who basically is like, I need to make the sale and doesn't really care whether the sale is a good thing. I have actually found it funny because there have been people when I was vending at shows, and I know other vendors who have done this as well, who have told people, this is not what you want. This is not the thing you need. And the astonishment that you see in people's faces is always really funny, I think. Because what happens is they can't quite compute the fact that you're not going, yeah, give me your money. But to me, a happy customer has always been worth far more than whatever money I might get from them. So that's my theory on the subject. But having your questions ready in advance is just helpful. I think it's helpful for you to maximize the value that you get from the show. And it's helpful for the vendors because they don't have to recite a laundry list of things to get you to decide whether or not this is something that you want. And continuing in that theme, and this is one that comes from my little vendor's heart. Honestly, don't waste the vendor's time. Don't go to them 2 minutes before the show closes and say, hey, if you'll give me a deal on this stuff, then I'll take it and you won't have to pack it up and take it home. Don't do that. Don't go hang out in the booth when the show closes and they're trying to get everything packed up because they have to pack up the whole booth and get it out of there before they can go home. Don't go hang out in the booth after the show's over. That's really annoying. I mean, like really, really annoying. I can't even tell you how annoying that is. And people do it because they're trying to get a deal, or they think that if they hit you at the end of the show, you're going to be tired and you're not going to care. And you're just going to go, oh yeah, I'll give you this for, 50% off or whatever, which is frankly quite dumb because there's always another show or another way to sell the product. And quite honestly, most of the time, the people who are staffing the booth are not the people who could make the decision that they could sell it for half price anyway. So don't do that. And, if you're just wandering the show and you see that vendors are busy, if you're not sure if the piece of equipment is a piece of equipment that you want, or if you're just kind of browsing, don't take up their time when they could be talking to customers who will actually buy what they have to sell. And again, the vendors are there to service you, totally true. But help them out. If you're just hanging around to see what's happening, or you're looking at something to just kind of get a feel for what it is and you don't know if you want it, or if you don't have the money to buy it, then visit the then if the vendor's busy, if they're talking to customers who actually look willing to buy, then don't take up their time right then. Come back later when they're less busy and chat if you want to. But don't hang out in people's booths if you're not gonna actually spend some money, because that's another thing that's really kind of annoying. Is we used to get people who would take the chairs out of our booth and kind of sit at the edge of the booth and talk, and it was like the amount of chutzpah it takes to do something like that. I was just like, really? Seriously? You're going to do that right now? Well, we're obviously busy here and you're going to, okay. But, it's just, I guess, basically be a good citizen of the show. Have a plan, be respectful of the vendor's time, be courteous. Don't block their booth if you're not actually interested in purchasing what they have to sell. Don't waste time if you're just idly curious, that sort of stuff. And again, like I said, this one totally comes from my experiences as being a vendor, because I've been a vendor and worked booths for a number of years. And you will be amazed how much time trade show attendees can waste, how much of a vendor's time a trade show attendee can waste. And then they walk off and you realize that you just spent a bunch of time. And don't get me wrong, vendors are there to serve you, and they're there to educate you, and they're there to help you make an informed buying choice. And that's what they're about. So don't feel like vendors are looking at you going, oh my God, I can't believe these people are here. But just make sure that if you're going to spend time in a vendor's booth, if you're going to take time asking questions, that there's a purpose behind it and you're not just randomly chatting, basically, I guess is what I want to say. And this next one comes from my experiences at teaching classes, and also from other people I know who teach classes. If you're taking a class at a show, and if your voice starts to go, so excuse me for a second, I'm going to grab a little water, then make sure that you prep for the class. Now, for some shows, there'll be a handout or something you can download ahead of time that will give you probably an outline of the class or an overview. Some teachers might put out a list of things that you might need to bring or have for the class, if it's a hands-on kind of, an embroidery class or rhinestone class or screen print class or whatever. So make sure you read all the instructions from the instructor before you go to the class, so that you make sure you have whatever's required and that you've looked at the handout and you know what to expect from the show. And then also spend a little time figuring out and writing down what questions you might want to ask, because this is one of those things where people go into the show or people go into the class and they're just listening and they don't really have a list of the questions they want to ask. And so you get to the end of the thing and then the instructor gets bombarded by people going, oh, I really wanted to ask this question. And in the instructor's head, they're going, man, I wish you'd asked that question during the lecture because it would have helped a lot of people. So take a little time and think about, okay, these are the top 3 things I'm hoping to learn, or these are the top 3 questions that I have, and write them down somewhere. And then, depending on how the instructor operates, some instructors, I'm one of these, like the questions throughout the lecture. Other instructors like you to hold everything to the end. But write down your questions, and then if something gets answered in the course of the lecture, you don't have to ask that one. But if they don't, then you're actually prepped to contribute and to ask a question that maybe other people will find helpful as well. And you'll give a little support to the instructor, because I got to tell you, when you're the instructor standing up there and talking for an hour and 20 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it is, that's a rough gig sometimes. So if you get people asking you questions and letting you know that they're participating, that's really, really helpful. And the other thing I will tell you, and this is, again, just a little secret from someone who has done seminars for a while, for God's sakes, look interested. There is nothing worse than lecturing to a group of people who look like they're 5 seconds from falling face down on the desk and drooling. And you're always going to get a couple of those people. And I always joke before the class starts that if you sit in the front row, you have to agree that you'll smile and look interested. But it's not really a joke, because there's a lot of energy going out from the speaker to try to keep you entertained and energized and interested. And if you're looking at, and I think every speaker would probably secretly admit this, if not publicly admit this. If there's one person in the class that's yawning or looking bored or, looking like they're zoned out, even if the rest of the class is incredibly engaged and excited about what you're saying, you're going to look at the one person who looks bored. It's just how it is. It's just how people operate. So, put a little extra effort into it. Look a little animated. It helps. And again, like I said, that comes from, my experiences at being a speaker. Have a plan for stowing stuff. Some shows will let you bring a wheelie bin or a little wheeled cart or whatever to carry stuff in. Some shows don't love those. Most vendors don't love those, honestly, because they're usually unwieldy and get in the way of everything. But you need to have a plan for how are you going to carry the items that you get. And yes, you can ask vendors to send you things if you don't want to take the literature then. Most vendors will do that, but it's actually far easier and makes a lot more sense to just take whatever is available and carry it with you so you can go over it that night or look at it, later on in the day or whatever you want to do. And also, yes, most shows will provide a tote bag. Tote bag quality can vary a lot. So if you think you're going to be carrying a lot of stuff or picking up a lot of information or samples or whatever it is, then you may want to get a more heavy duty tote bag of your own or a backpack or whatever it is. Now, keep in mind, that if you're carrying a tote bag or a backpack, this is something that's going to go over your shoulder or have to be carried in your hand, and it could get very, very heavy. So that's something that you want to consider when you're considering what method you want to use too. A backpack distributes the weight a little bit more, but it may have a slightly smaller carrying area, so that's something to consider. A tote bag may be bigger, but if you're walking around with a really heavy tote bag weighing down your shoulder for half the show, is that going to be that much fun? Wheelie bins, wheeled suitcases, those are also an option. But again, the issue there can possibly be maneuverability, because if the show's really crowded, you're trying to maneuver it through a bunch of people. Or if the booths are really crowded, you're trying to maneuver your wheelie bin through a crowded booth. So those are always things to consider too. It's mostly a question of what suits you best. Lindsay says, we have a lot of attendees who bring an empty rolling suitcase. Yes, that's another option. Again, that does, you do have to then consider the logistics of how do you get that through crowds, and if the booth is crowded, how do you get into the booth? But rolling suitcases are another option, a rolling briefcase, any of that kind of stuff. The thing is, if you think you're going to be picking up a lot of stuff, you want to make sure you have some way to carry it that's not going to leave you crippled at the end of the day. That's the major thing. And the other option too is, for those people who say, well, can you send me something? That's not necessarily a bad option by any means. If you ask a vendor, can you send me this information? But you always run the risk then of vendors forgetting or something not getting to you. If you have the ability to take things right then, it's probably best to do that. So the other thing too is to remember that you don't have to take everything that's offered to you. If you don't think you're going to be interested in whatever the particular thing is, just say no thank you, because the vendor spent money on whatever information they're handing out. And if it's going to someone who's just going to take it home and throw it in a corner or throw it in the wastebasket, then just, politely tell them that, I'm really not interested in this. Thank you. And move on. And that will also cut down your load that you're carrying. So it's just kind of a reminder that just because something's there doesn't mean you have to take it. If it's not something that you think you're going to use or that's applicable to you, just say no thank you and don't put it in your bag or your wheelie cart or whatever it is. And you can also ask vendors too to hold things for you until you're ready to go. So if you buy product from someone or buy equipment from someone, you can always say, hey, can you just put my name on this and store it for me? And I'll come and get it when I'm ready to go, or I'll come and get it at the end of the day, or whatever it is. And most vendors will be totally okay with that and have no problem with it and be more than happy to do that for you. So definitely something to, again, it's one of those things where you never know until you ask. And if you don't ask, you're always going to get a no. But most vendors have space designated for storage and won't have an issue with putting a larger purchase away for you until you're ready to go home at the end of the day or back to your room or whatever it is, which leads me to my next point, which is stay at the event hotel. Now, one of the things that people will do is they'll try and stay in another hotel because it's sometimes cheaper than staying at the hotel where the event is. It's just, sometimes if you stay a mile or two away, excuse me, I got to grab a little water here. You end up saving, 10 or 20 bucks a night or whatever it is. Saving money is not a bad thing. I get the impulse to do that. But if you stay at the event hotel, there are some advantages. The first one is if you do make purchases during the day, you're close enough to be able to go up to your room, drop off whatever you bought, and go back to the show without losing a whole amount of time. So this can be a good or bad thing, because if you can easily take stuff up to your room, you might be motivated to purchase more than you would be otherwise. But it's an option that is really nice to have. And it also means if you're picking up a lot of literature and samples and things and your bag that you brought gets really heavy, you can go unload it in your room and then come back and stock up on the second run. So there's advantages to that. But the other advantage to staying in the event hotel, which people don't often think of, but I think is quite a big one, is if you're staying in the event hotel, most of the vendors are staying there too. And they're probably eating in the hotel restaurant or hanging out in the hotel bar. Or if there's people that are lecturers that you want to get to know better, or people you've always wanted to meet, or you're looking for a job or whatever it is. If you're in the event hotel, you have the ability to go down and mingle and network and meet people. Or if the show has a particular event, like the theme night that Applique Getaway does, or the little banquet that Dax does on Friday nights, or any of that, you can go and you can spend the time and you don't have to worry about, I'm at another hotel and I'm going to have to drive, or I'm going to have to go change and then come back, or any of that. You just go up to your room, do whatever you need to do, come back down, and everybody's there. So it's a huge opportunity to network and make connections. And Cindy makes a good point too. You have to plan ahead. The event hotels book quickly. Yes, a lot of the event hotels do book quickly. So that's something that once you decide you're going to go to the show, make your reservation early to make sure that you get and also make sure that most show sites will also have a link or a number that you can call that will give you access to the show discount on the rooms or the show room plan. So that's something that you want to make sure that you follow up on and take care of, because sometimes the discounts on the room, if you're a show attendee, will be much better than the regular room rate for the hotel for that time of year. Also, most shows have room blocks they have to fill. And if you just register randomly and not using their link or their number, then you don't get counted as being a person who's going to the show. So therefore you don't fill their room block. So that's not a good thing. But I really honestly think, and having done this both ways, stayed in the event hotel and stayed elsewhere, the advantages to being in the hotel definitely are worth the extra 10 or 20 bucks you might spend. And sometimes you're going to find out that it won't make a difference, but just being there to be able to network and mingle and get together with people for dinner and make connections and talk shop and talk business, that's huge. And it's a value that is definitely worth the money you might save by staying 5 miles away in another hotel. Again, just my opinion, but having done it both ways, I've always found more value in staying at the event hotel. Not to mention the fact that just having a room that's close by, if you get tired, if you've had too much of people, if you have a tote bag load of stuff that you need to unload, it's just so much more convenient and so much easier. So I would always say stay in the event hotel if it is at all possible. But Cindy's totally right. Register early, because the room blocks can sell out and then you have to stay somewhere else, and that's no fun. And finally, the last thing that I want to say is follow up after the show. And again, this seems like a no-brainer, but a lot of people don't. They collect all the stuff, they get all the samples, and then everything goes home and it goes in a corner and it sits for 6 months because they get busy, or they have jobs they have to do, or they forget, or whatever it is. Here's the thing. If you picked up samples, if you picked up literature, somebody went through the trouble to put all that stuff together so that you could benefit from it. So make sure that you benefit from it. Try the samples, read the literature, figure out if you have questions, follow up with the vendors if you're interested in something. I can't tell you how many times we would spend weeks, months putting together sample packs and get zero response out of it. And okay, part of that is the cost of doing business, and we realize that. But it really gets disheartening when you put all this stuff together and you try to package it attractively and you try to make it something that's going to be useful and helpful for people. And then you call people a couple months later because they're on your attendee list that you got from the show, and they say, oh yeah, it's sitting in a corner of my sewing room, I'll get to it. And you're just like, really? Seriously? Ugh. So annoying. So again, it's one of those things that, if you're interested in something, follow up really relatively quickly after the show, because that's also when the vendors are going to remember you if they talk to you. Because honestly, if you work a lot of shows, people start to run together after a while. So if you contact a vendor, if you're interested in something, or if you talk to a particular salesperson or whatever it is, if you contact them fairly quickly after the show, there's a much better chance that they're going to remember who you are and remember what you discussed. So that's just something that it's definitely a good thing to do, and something I would recommend, both as a former vendor and as someone who has attended trade shows myself. I know when I've gotten back to a vendor quickly or relatively soon after the show, the response has been a lot more germane to what I wanted to do. And that is, we got one more comment here, it looks like. Yes, Cindy, there you go. Just be respectful on both ends. Exactly. And that is all I have to say. So I'm going to do a little bit of pimping here, just because. If you're interested in Applique Getaway, you can join our Facebook group at On My Way AG. And I hope you will do that, because we have a great group over there and we're having a lot of good discussions. If you're interested in being a vendor and want to get some more information on that, you can join the Applique Getaway vendor group. This is our general group for people who are just looking to be vendors or thinking about it and want to get some more information. So if that's something that you're considering, join that group and get some information about that. And also, of course, Women in Garment Decoration, which will one day have a booth at a trade show, I promise. Well, I don't promise, but I think. But if you are a female in garment decoration, come join this group. We'd love to have you. It's a great place to be. Next week, not sure what's happening yet. I'm talking to some guests. If not a guest, it'll be me covering a topic. And we'll see what happens when we get there. In any case, thank you for being here today. I am sorry that StreamYard was being so buggy with the groups. I don't know what's happening with that. I don't know why it's being so annoying, but things happen and we do what we can. In any case, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And I will see you next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.